What's up, guys? Welcome into our first roundtable video where we're going to get something I hate doing, and that's getting other people's opinions that I'm going to disagree with. So we had news that came out this past week of college football playoff expansion or non-expansion, and we have several guests here today. We have Connor O'Gara, who's our main guy from the Saturday Down South site. We have Spenser Davis. We have Derek Peterson, who's doing Saturday Out West and Saturday Road. I almost got mixed up there for a second. But in covering, the ACC and the Pac-12, we pretty much we kicked out the person who's supposed to be here from the Big Ten, and that was not on purpose. But honestly, I think it was kind of a blessing in disguise. So we're actually going to start here. We are an SEC page that started the company. I'm going to start with Connor on that and just kind of get your opinion, your feedback, and what you thought was the biggest takeaway from what happened when they announced that they are not going to expand the playoffs and it's going to run through 2025 as is.
First of all, when you introduced me, I thought of doing the twirl. We hate the twirl, Michael. Don't do the twirl.
Don't do the twirl.
Yeah. Kevin Warren probably thinks that he is like Michael Scott at the shareholders meeting, and he's sitting there at the table trying to figure out the exact right thing to say to make everybody not hate his guts. The problem at this point is that he has essentially started a movement. Well, I don't want to say started a movement. That's too strong of a verb for a man so weak. But Kevin Warren is part of a movement with the alliance that has essentially handicapped the expansion, the initial push for expansion to get to 12 teams. And for what? Because Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC. The Big Ten is missing out on money. Oh, it doesn't need money. Yeah, I get that. What does the Big Ten need? It needs teams besides Ohio State to feel like they actually have a chance to win a national championship, which we haven't seen in the 21st century. So, Kevin Warren is sitting there pretending like he is the alpha when in reality, he still really doesn't know what he's doing. And I don't really understand what the end goal is for the Big Ten besides just having a couple of people in its corner.
Hey, just real quick, because I wasn't planning on talking about this, but this kind of caught my interest. You said in this century. And now I'm thinking about it, and I could be wrong here. And you guys help me out because I don't know the illustrious history of the Big Ten. But going back into the last century, you have Michigan won a half of one in 97. When was the one before that? Michigan State, when they split with Notre Dame, and neither one of them should have. Seriously, I'm trying to think of it because I think they want more people at the table, like you would say. And that's kind of what's confusing to me because all of this is like a pushback to the SEC, right? It's like you don't want to have the SEC get more teams in. And then you look at Sankey, the commissioner, and he's like, well, we just got 50% of the field in this year. So what's really the issue? Before I want to talk to Derek from the Pac-12 because I feel like they never get a chance to speak. It's always going to be last, but just keeping with tradition, I'm going to keep you last. And then you're going to be limited to 5 seconds, just so you know. Notice, Spenser, I want to hear about from the ACC side of this. We talk about Ohio State being like the biggest one in the Big Ten and other teams wanting a chance. I thought the ACC, not just because Clemson was bad last year, there was a lot more parity. What was the feeling from that conference and those teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's the conference right now in terms of national title contenders is Clemson and Florida State, right? Just from a resources perspective. And those teams, and you can maybe throw Miami in there moving forward with how they've, increased their resources over the past few months. It looks like they're committed to doing that moving forward. But you've got a few teams there that can really compete. And if they go 12-0, 12-1, they're probably going to make it into a 14 playoff. One of those teams will most years, right? I mean, we've seen that with Clemson. Florida State's been down other than that first playoff. They haven't really been in the mix, but they'll be back at some point. But yeah, I think Connor hit it, right? Like this whole thing blew up when Oklahoma and Texas decided to move to the SEC. And you see this alliance build around the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12, just trying to coalesce a little bit of power together, which on one end is a little bit petty, right?
Right.
The fans are
a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it's pretty petty. I feel like the fans and the players are the ones that are really the big losers here, because like you mentioned, the SEC gets half the teams in a lot of years anyways. They're getting at least one and probably two in most years. So there's not a whole, a big need for them to expand the playoff, even though they were one of the big drivers of it. Right. And, I wonder what the alternate universe looks like where the Oklahoma and Texas story doesn't leak until like around now, because it sure seemed like the playoff expansion was going to be finalized late last summer before that news broke.
Would have been a lot less stressful of a Wednesday for me. I'll tell you that much. That was a lot of fun. Connor, you were there when it happened. It was just like,
That was weird.
dude.
The dude who broke the story was sitting like 30 feet away from
right.
me. I mean, it was crazy. And then for that, like, I'm sitting there and the entire room is like feverishly searching what's going on. And meanwhile, Jimbo Fisher is sitting up there at the podium. I got my hand raised the entire freaking time. Jimbo Fisher went like 25 minutes without being asked a question about this report that just came out about Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. And Mike Bianchi, of course, the Orlando Sentinel, asked it right before I was about to go up. I literally had to tell him, like, no, he just took my question, which was just baffling and big fail by the big J's out there. But what I think is interesting is the point that Derek just brought up about how, or about that Spencer just brought up rather, but the fact that we could have seen this play out differently. The timeline could have been, hey, this is happening. We're going to agree to it. And then Sankey pulls that ace out and says, here, this is what we're doing. And this is how we're going to continue to dominate the sport. Because had it come out that the 12-team playoff was happening and we're just talking about these conferences as is, we would all of a sudden say, well, hey, maybe the Big Ten is going to be in better position than the SEC. And maybe we're going to look at this in a different sort of way. And instead it's seen as this all of a sudden like, oh, well, now the SEC is just going to be existing in its own world. And it will truly feel like the SEC versus everyone else until the playoff is expanded and maybe even thereafter.
You know, it really sucks about it too, is the fact that like my team is in the SEC. And I don't really care about those other teams during the season. I want my team to win. So I'm not that concerned with like, oh, cool, we have a strength of schedule now. It's like even better because Texas and Oklahoma came in. That makes it harder. You know what I mean? Like it seemed like there's so much, not even top heavy. There's just so much, like, just from a brand standpoint, it was, you know, getting pretty thick in the SEC. But I'll say, you look out west, and I haven't willingly talked to anybody from the Pac-12 in at least 6 months. But no, it's so like, and we give you a hard time. We talked about this off air. I thought honestly, the Pac-12 commissioner, the guy they hired from his sports background and like his background in general professionally,
say his name.
There's no way. There's absolutely. I don't even know what it is. It's like Tchaikovsky, right? Is that what it is?
George Kliavkoff.
Kliavkoff? That's not that bad.
Kliavkoff, yeah.
Okay, never mind. George Kliavkoff. We need to do it's not a spelling bee. It's just me pronouncing words from like the Big Ten and the assistant coach for Michigan's name. I couldn't get that one either. Anyway, but we're talking about the Pac-12. Most off seasons, I don't feel like there's not like a groundswell of confidence or a surge of confidence going into the season necessarily. You kind of have that this year. Like, you know, at least you don't have one that is like, and I'm not saying this to be rude, but like that's taken seriously by the rest of the country, right? Like, but now you have Lincoln Riley out at USC. We don't know how long that's going to take for that rebuild. They might be relevant right away. What's the feeling around the Pac-12? Is like, because is this an Oregon USC like 2-team race still, or what are the thoughts on that?
No, I mean, it's Utah right now.
Yeah.
They're the team. I don't personally believe that USC is going to immediately become a dark horse playoff contender in year one. You know, the Pac-12 is certainly going to become their biggest supporters in year two under Lincoln Riley. But like, so like, I kind of want to ask a question, and it's gonna table Pac-12 discussion for a minute, which is fitting with the Pac-12. Let's talk about the 5 major conferences. Does the SEC need expansion of the playoff? No. Does the ACC need expansion of the playoff? No. Until Miami is up and running, it's basically Clemson, and Clemson's going to get in, and a bad Clemson season was 10 wins. Does the Big Ten need expansion of the playoff? Well, they've got Michigan in it, and they got Ohio State in it in a good Ohio State year, and they're about to get like massive TV money on their next deal. So like, who are the major power players in the sport right now that want college football playoff expansion? Like, is there any? Like, why are we having?
Oh,
I mean,
for sure.
It's money, yeah. It's more media rights that, yeah.
So that leads back to the Pac-12, because they would be the only Autonomy 5 conference that I guess you could throw the Big 12 in there, but they're losing Oklahoma and Texas, so nobody's going to really care about them anymore. But the Pac-12 would be the only Power 5 conference that would really be like, we actually want an expanded field, because they haven't had a team in the playoffs since 2016. So you have that, and then you ask, why on earth did they vote against expansion? Because a report came out that the Big Ten and the ACC were the three teams that voted against expansion. And you can talk about like the Rose Bowl's influence on things, which I think is probably a little bit more outsized than it actually is. You could talk about, the Pac-12 commissioner has said that revenue distribution and sort of that question of what's going to happen under the new model is something that he's curious about and doesn't have a ton of answers to right now. Those are all excuses. It seems like the Pac-12 just voted in a voting block with the Big Ten and the ACC to preserve the alliance.
Yes.
That's what it seems like.
And the silly thing is that they're getting hung up on automatic qualifiers.
Yeah.
Automatic qualifiers are silly. To continue to have this debate about automatic qualifiers, and you need to, I saw the RG3 tweet, which was just hot garbage, all due respect to him, but he's talking about, how you just need to make it the highest ranked conference champions. We've got 15 years of evidence to show us that not all conferences are created equal. I'm sorry. You have to go back to the middle of the 2000s to find a Pac-12 champ who won it all. You have to find the same thing with the Big 12. All right. Like, this is not something that has just been, media bias. And that feels like that's what the alliance is trying to combat, is this notion that, the SEC is just going to get the benefit of the doubt if we don't have automatic qualifiers. You're darn right it will. Why wouldn't it? Imagine living in a world in which you could have that much national success, a conference that's 13-3 in the college football playoff, and pretend like that doesn't matter. Give me a break. If we're still arguing about automatic qualifiers in 2026, the sport is going to be in a really frustrating place from a playoff perspective, because while this won't get changed unless it's unanimous, that's why this alliance has actually been effective in what it was trying to do. You still need the majority of the Power 5 conferences come at the end of 2025 to be able to renegotiate the playoff, because there's no guarantee we're getting expansion. If they continue to hold in this current position, then we might see it at a 14 playoff, even through another contract, which would begin in 2026.
Has the alliance been effective though? Like, I could sit here and say that the alliance has done absolutely nothing for the ACC and the Pac-12. And I don't want to I don't want to minimize some of the DEI efforts that have come out, some of the off the field stuff that they've done, some of the initiatives that the alliance has created, because those are important too. But when they announced this thing in response to OU and Texas joining the SEC, they announced it as this is what we're doing from a football standpoint. They announced it as this is a thing that we're doing that is going to be football centric. And the carrot at the end of the stick was non-conference games between the conferences. And that was the more interesting thing that happened this week. Was Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith came out and said that the Big Ten would sooner walk away than go down to 8 conference games from 9. So you have the Pac-12 in December saying we're ready to go down to 8 conference games if it means we can start scheduling games against the Big Ten and the ACC. 2 months later, you don't even get a response from the commissioner. You get a response from the, de facto commissioner of the Big Ten, depending on how you view Ohio State, saying, yeah, that's not happening. So the bigger conversation, the more interesting conversation to me is, what exactly are the ACC and the Pac-12 benefiting from an alliance with the Big Ten? It doesn't surprise me at all to see the Big Ten holding up expansion, because the Big Ten is quickly moving into a situation where it's going to be the Big Ten, the SEC, and then everybody else and all of the little people. So why, they're not acting in they're focused on their best interests.
Right.
Kevin Warren is focused on the best interests of the Big Ten. He doesn't care about the Pac-12. He doesn't care about the ACC. So why are those two leagues aligning themselves with the Big Ten? Why would they vote against expansion? I don't understand it.
They need to look at themselves and ask that question as well, because that's a very Regina George, Mean Girl situation, where it's like when you said it, what are they benefiting from it? The only thing that came in my head was maybe they have a car and the other ones can't drive. That's what that relationship reminds me of. It's well, I don't really like this person, but they drive me to school every day. I don't have a car. I'm 15. I don't get it. They benefit nothing from it. Go ahead, Spencer.
Well, yeah, I think from the ACC standpoint, they just don't want to seem like they're going to fall in line with the SEC at every turn. I mean, you look at how the SEC just poached Oklahoma and Texas. Why couldn't they do the same to Clemson and Florida State in a decade or so when that grant of rights is almost up? Like, that's probably a scary thought there over at the league office. So yeah, it's petty. Like it's a power grab in somewhat, they're grasping at whatever they can, but I think that they're trying to preserve some power down the line. I do think they will get the expansion figured out. It's just too much money, but it makes sense that they wanted to do it on their own terms and not just fall in line with what the SEC wanted to do.
Marler, I thought you were going to make the reference that it was like Regina George making out with Aaron Samuels just to spite Katie Herring instead of, when she wasn't even really into him, and she just did that because she wanted to kind of mess with him a little bit, with her.
That's a good point too. The other reference that I keep thinking of too is that scene from Ricky Bobby and the Talladega Nights, and the French driver comes into that race car bar and he's like, we invented, and he's like saying all this stuff, and he's like, the menage a trois, and then that guy goes, we invented missionary. That's what it feels like as well. It's like all the bragging points are not as great here. And the final thing too, I'll say this, and on a serious note, you were asking, Derek, you're saying, what have they accomplished? Like who is it impacted, right? More than anything, it's impacted the fans. Like all of us, I would assume you guys are like me, started out being fans of this sport well before we got into jobs of it. And I think what I was excited, the moment they brought up the fact that 12-team playoff with the first round bye, and they brought up the fact that they were going to have home games in the playoff, there's not a single person that heard of the idea of like, you're Georgia going to Madison, Wisconsin or something like that in December, or like, these non-conference matchups that we're starting to see more and more getting home and homes like booked at the start of the year. It excites everyone in college football. And you're also giving the little guys a chance. You're going to have, like the group of 6 or group of 5 schools get in. I don't understand why you meet for 14 months and you can't come to a single compromise, but more than anything, it's the fans that got hurt. And you could argue the student athletes as well, but the fans, especially, I thought it was bad with the NCAA because they do nothing to promote student athletes and and do anything to impact them, in my opinion, in a positive way, long-term, right? The fans gain nothing from this. They gain nothing. We just got told like, this is what you're going to get. It's going to be on New Year's Eve again, probably, because we don't really care about anything you guys have voiced and make a difference.
NCAA is nothing.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, whatever your expectations are for the NCAA in college football, lower them to new levels, because that is essentially what they're responsible for this at this point with college football playoff, a totally separate entity. And that's the reason why we're at this stalemate, right? If this were college basketball, we wouldn't be having this discussion. And for all the people that continue to say, oh, we need to have a commissioner of college football, I continue to push back on that and say, well, nobody's going to relinquish power. Nobody is giving up that power. Do you think Greg Sankey is sitting here with all the power that he has? And he's like, you know what? Hey, I'm going to get all these university presidents together in a room, and we're going to decide on a person to give our power to. That's just not the way that any of this is going to work. And that's why everybody will continue to act out of their own best interest. And even within the alliance, there are going to be moments in which they act out of their own best interest. And that's not going away anytime soon, including the 9-game conference schedule. This whole thing is just at such a weird place right now. And everybody feels like they're on kind of this island. And I guess the island of the alliance is its own unique thing.
Well, to that end about, what's going on with the NCAA. I mean, 2026 is a long time away. What's to say, there was a report from the Sports Business Journal that the Big Ten could potentially create a bidding war that could give their next TV deal like upwards of a $1 billion valuation. What's to say that in 2025, it's not the Big Ten and the SEC taking the ball and forming its own thing and saying, we're the 2 best leagues. We have the most money. You two, the rest of you mean nothing to us. We're just going to do our own thing. Like I felt like there should have been more of a sense of urgency from the other leagues at this point in time to try to get something done right away, because this could get, even further stratified as we move closer to that 2026 date.
Derek, you're forgetting the key detail here. They looked each other in the eye.
All right. Yeah, that's huge.
No hand. Yeah.
They shook hands.
You're right.
That's all you need to know. They're not going to separate here. This isn't going to be some Big Ten SEC thing. They have each other's word. And if you don't have that, you have nothing.
Just don't ask for one less conference game.
That's
it. That's the
That
dividing
is
line.
the most Big Ten thing ever, right there. By the way, just like just digging in and being stubborn for no reason. Just anyway, petty white nonstop. But no, I appreciate it, guys. All great information, really good stuff, and we'll have to do it again soon. Hopefully, it'll be with better news, and it'll be something we can talk about with a playoff expansion, or I don't know, maybe something will happen in the Pac-12. There's an NCAA basketball tournament coming up. I hear that's good.
Well, I'm sure you can't wait to talk more Utah football. I think
So okay, I do want to talk about that off air. We're not going to do it on here. I'm glad you brought that up because I love watching Utah. I love watching Utah football. It's like because it's kind of a similar brand to what we have down here. I just wonder if the Pac-12 is ever going to get behind it. But that's a story for another day. We can talk about that, and I would love to hear about Utah football. The state, absolutely not. The culture, there isn't one. But Utah football, I'm in. We'll see you guys soon.